Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Firecracker Farm, and if you're watching, you guys will be able to see it. They are a company out of Florida that infuse hot peppers into sea salt. Really awesome stuff. I've been using it for over a year now. They come in these awesome push grinders. This is a special buddy batch called Snake Eater. It's infused with Tennessee bourbon and bitters. Really cool stuff. I love using this on eggs in the morning, steak as a finisher. Really good stuff. Some of my two favorites also is Pineapple Express and Apocalypto. And 10% of the proceeds go to Op 300 and Pipe Hitter Foundation. Get that in there for you guys. And I have a discount code 10% off Food Origins Pod C at firecracker.farm. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. It's an awesome episode 51 with one of my best friends, Tim Freeman. Enjoy. It was so clean, and I was just like, oh, that's the next thing. Before you have like a studio where you can have people come in and going, that's for a solo studio is pretty dope. So
I get studio envy when I see really cool studios like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, why do I gotta be so lame?
There's a bunch. Hey, we are back with the Food Origins Podcast, and I could not be more excited for this guest. I've known him since 2012 is how far we go back. We met at thanks to my wife, girlfriend at the time, introduced me to Tim back in 2012 at the Jiu-Jitsu Expo. So it was kind of a cool event, and we'll get into all that stuff. But, you know, I've known Tim for a long time, a really good friend of mine. I consider him one of my best friends. We've been chatting back and forth to have him on eventually. Tim is very instrumental in helping me start this podcast when I first started a couple years ago. Tim is the creator of Inside BJJ podcast. He is a black belt under Sergio Silva, an Eddie Bravo 10th Planet black belt. He is the owner of 10th Planet Stockton and 10th Planet Nashville. He is also the co-host of Grappling Hour, and you'll also see him at the PGF and some of the submersive events. It's pretty awesome to have you on, Tim. I know we've been chatting back and forth and doing all kinds of stuff, and I have nothing but thanks for you to help me start this podcast. So welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Dude, it's fun. You know, it's funner to be a guest than it is to be a host, because all you got to do is sit down and go. But yeah, man, it's awesome. We've known each other a long time. Time sure moves fast. When you say 2012, that seems to me like a long time ago now. It really does, you know. And I remember running into you. I remember hanging out with you at Metamoris at the epic after party. That's the memory that's like forever lodged in my brain.
Yeah, I always think it's Metamoris, but my wife reminds me it was the expo with like
where we first met. Yeah,
all the Gracies, Henzo, you know, kind of hosting the whole thing, and like Renato Laranja and Nate Diaz almost getting into a fight. Because he didn't know, man. Nate didn't know Renato was just playing around, and he's like, hey, take it easy, dude. Yeah. Metamoris was nuts. Like just seeing the after party, and you're like, hey, you gotta come after. And I was like, oh, and then just looking at the lineup at the bar, and I'm just like, dude, if anyone gets out of line, it's over. I mean, it was just the who's who sitting there, and I'm like, oh. Or if any of them get pissed off at each other, I'm like, we gotta go, dude. This is gonna be on, dude. Somebody's getting smashed. Yeah, it was awesome.
I think Renato was doing his shtick there too, and Solo didn't quite know how to take it in the beginning. And Solo, if you remember, he just had knee surgery or was going into knee surgery, and he was walking with a cane, and he had injured his eye, and he had a patch over his eye, and he had a black blazer, the eye patch, the cane. He looked like he was midway through his pirate transformation to be messed with. And so just like zeroed in on it, you know.
Oh man.
That's pretty funny stuff.
I don't remember Sala being all like that.
Yeah, he was pretty banged up that event.
Damn, that's crazy. We got to take you back. So, you know, obviously this podcast is mostly food. Of course, we'll be talking plenty of jiu-jitsu as well, but
Um, take me back to growing up. Where'd you grow up? What's your ethnic background, and what'd you eat growing up? That's kind of where we usually start all those
So,
put
uh,
together.
I grew up in Stockton, California, which is not really usually thought of as the cuisine capital of the world, but the food's pretty good there, actually. And my ethnic background pretty much is I'm just a normal Caucasian American dude. My grandmother was full-blooded Italian, so there was an influence from that on our lives. And I feel like I got the skin complexion and the olive tone from her because my cousins who are related to me as double cousins where my mom and their mom are sisters and my dad and their dad are brothers, two sisters married two brothers, same grandparents on both sides. They don't look anything like me at all. Like when we tell people we're related, they don't believe us. Um, but yeah, that's my background in Stockton. Food growing up, I was a pretty picky eater for probably the first 10 years. And there's still some things that I won't eat. I won't eat straight mayonnaise. I can't do it. I could barely make my kids a sandwich and put mayonnaise on it. It's that bad. I just have I'm repulsed by it. I don't know why. Um, we grew up eating a lot of Italian food that my grandma made. She was a very, very good cook. My grandfather, who she married, was like a Dust Bowl baby, and he was from Oklahoma. He made all kinds of backwoods, like fried catfish and homemade cornbread and all kinds of stuff like that. So we had a good little mix there at her house. In our own house, my parents had, like, my mom had a few little dishes that she made. I remember she used to make these stuffed bell peppers that I really liked, and I was pretty picky, so I was surprised they even liked them, to be honest with you. My dad would barbecue all the time, but my dad's a great dude. I love my dad. He would do things like this. He'd get the grill out and he would say, "This is how you start the barbecue," like classic Weber style grill. He would
Right.
put the briquettes in, put lighter fluid on the briquettes because it's old school. Put the top grate on, close it, and then douse the whole thing in lighter fluid. And he set the whole damn thing on fire. And I just stand there in the driveway like this is the neatest thing ever.
Right.
Uh, I don't think it made for good steak. I'm not positive. I remember not really liking the steak much, but he did make good. I ate pretty plain, but I did get into the Italian food quite a bit. I really enjoyed it when my grandma made it for us.
What kind of dishes did you make?
She her classic was like homemade lasagna. That was the one that we all wanted. But she made quite a bit of spaghetti, and she made homemade pizza, which isn't exactly Italian, but she was really good at that. She made lots of different kinds of soups. As a kid, I don't even remember exactly what the soups were. There was probably minestrone in there, but outside of that, she was just a good cook. She made all kinds of other things too. One of my favorite things about staying at her house, and we were there almost every day because we went to school from her. So all the grandkids met up at her house, and then we would all walk to school together.
Mm.
But we'd come in the door and she'd say, like, "What do you want for breakfast today?" And it seemed like no matter what we said, she was like, "Okay," and she was in there making it. And she wasn't pulling it boxes of mix out. She was like getting the flour and getting the eggs and getting the milk and getting the salt and just doing it from scratch. So it was always really neat to see her do that and then to enjoy the food that she made. It was really good.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Like especially as a kid, like just having that day to day, day in, day out. It's
Yeah,
like great exposure.
it really was. I remember her sister who lived right around the corner from us. And I might have the name of this particular style of bread wrong, but this is what they called it. They called it pizza wheelie bread. And it
Mm.
was almost like a dessert bread that she would make. And she always transported it. Like when she made it, everyone in the family wanted some. Like people drive in from out of town to get it. But she always dispersed it in these brown paper bags. And I remember there'd be like some powdered sugary thing on it, and you could kind of see the oils would start to seep into the brown bag. But that's how you knew you got the good batch. You didn't want the batch where the bag was pristine because you're like, no, these are dried. You wanted the fresh
Yeah.
ones that were hot and oily still. So she made that. My Aunt Daisy that was her signature thing. I remember really like Jones and friend. She only did it like once a year, but that was real fantastic stuff.
That sounds good. It's almost like a donut kind of.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of like it was in between a pastry and like a traditional, fresh bread. It wasn't super sweet, but it was just sweet enough,
You ever had that Filipino star bread? That's sweet. It's
I
kind of
don't
got
think
like a
so.
roll. It's super short. That's what it
Interesting.
reminds me of. Yeah, it's like it's got like it's sweet. The bread is sweet, but it's soft like a croissant, just not as layered. But it's just super easy
Yeah.
to eat.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for
Interesting.
that kind of stuff. I can eat that stuff all day long. For easy. I already love bread, so that like really sweet, good tasting bread, I'll down a whole batch of it, man.
Yeah. I mean, you already mentioned one of the things you didn't like. Was there something else that you didn't like growing up and then you like it now? Like I
Uh,
often, stuff changes over time.
yeah, I would say I'll give you a couple things. One is my hit list. These are things that I still don't like. Mayo's at the top of the list. Mustard's at the top of the list.
Really?
Black olives, can't do it. It's like I can't. If I eat a black olive, I'm just like, oh yeah, I don't know.
I'm with you on
Crazy,
that one.
not good, man. Not my favorite thing. A lot of pickled stuff, I just don't have that taste for it. Like if it's disguised well or it's made very well, then I can do it. But just to like pop a pickle out of the jar and eat it, there's no way. Not happening, dude. Um, I love food though. As I get
Okay.
older,
Yeah.
salad was the big one for me as a kid. I could not fathom why people would eat salad. Love salad as an adult. There were lots of sauces. I wanted everything plain and dry. Like I didn't like my food to be real soggy or anything like that. But as an adult, I love sauce. I love most stuff that people put on food. I'll eat it straight away. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I was pretty picky, man. I remember they often had to make, a separate like plate for me that didn't have all the stuff on it. And one time, my cousin's mom had made us sandwiches, and I was like a food inspector. I would open it up and I would look at it to make sure.
Yeah.
And she had mistakenly put mayo on it and she scraped it off. And I opened that up and I looked at it and I gave it a little smell, gave it a little taste, and I was like, I can't eat it. I flipped out. I got a whooping from my grandpa that day. I went crazy in the gym. Ultimate Warrior crazy, man. I worked out. They're like, you got to get a hold of yourself, kid. We're not doing that in this. My grandpa was old school.
Yeah, that's also like, you ate what your parents gave you for the most part, and I think I was a slow eater back then as a kid. I don't know why, but I was the last one to finish my food, whether it was great or not. I don't know. I just ate super slow. And then later, obviously, that changed when I started working in the restaurant. They're like, hey, dude, you got to eat that in like a minute because you either eat or you don't, you're not going to eat for another 4 hours. So I'm like,
right.
Scarfing it down. Of course, with jobs and work, it changes. But yeah, like, my mom made some interesting dishes too sometimes, and she was like, hey, this costs $1 to make, so you guys are going to eat it. Some of you guys have heard, but like my mom's done like just rice, cream of mushroom soup with tuna.
Oh, wow.
So it's tuna. So rice, just steamed rice, tuna, and then cream of mushroom on top. And that was our meal. And I was like, it was in like a casserole dish. And I'm just like, and my brother looked at me and is like, yeah, we gotta all take one for the team. This is a meal tonight. We're not getting anything fancy today. And like, I would eat that. It would just take me an hour to eat that,
It's
and
like
we're like trying to put soy sauce or, furikake, which is the seaweed, and sesame, with bonito on it. And I was just like, all right, we'll just eat it. Mom's making it. We got to eat it,
I could see without the cream of mushroom and maybe just some teriyaki in there mixed up. Maybe I could have okay, I could do that.
Yeah.
That would have been a real challenge for me as a kid. That would have been rough. I probably would have got a whooping from your dad that day.
Yeah, I mean, everyone had to eat it. Everyone was eating it, so it wasn't like, oh, just the kids got it. So at least like
Yeah.
it was like everyone, in my mom's defense, she was like, hey, it was really cheap to make.
Yeah.
Food was starting to get expensive, especially for three guys in the house. She's the only lady in the house, so it's like you guys are eating like through. We would eat through everything, so it's like this is really easy to make. Costs a couple bucks. It's fast. It's quick. We always had rice on hand in my house, and she was like, "Here you go." And we're like, "All right." And she laughs about it later because obviously she got way better at making other
Sure.
stuff, but also just better ingredients and stuff. But of course, we had all these different chicken dishes and curry, and you know, started playing around with the wok and all that other stuff. But like, yeah, that's just one of those dishes. As a kid, it's ingrained in my memory. Like, when you're talking about stuff you didn't like, it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, mom, but that's the one that hurt.
Yeah.
But what else did you not like? And then like, did you start seeing like, you visit friends or whatever? Do you have like some memories of like dishes and you're like, oh my God, like I eat that now because I went to, somebody's house or stuff like that.
I'm trying to think about stuff I didn't like outside of that. I mean, I ate a lot of junk food. I know that. And my parents, we had a lot of, processed food that would be in the house. And my parents didn't have a ton of money. So it was kind of like one of those, whatever we got, like you're going to eat it. Um, I'll tell you one thing that I ate as a kid that I still enjoy today. And this is what we called it. It might not be the right name. There was a little market down the street from our house called Madison Market when I was really young. And my sister and I would walk down to this market. It was like a block away. And they sold these, we called them parash or parosh. It was
Oh
like
yeah.
a breaded, heated up thing with meat stuffed inside of it. And I could taste it right now. It was so good that I've always had a soft spot for anything like that. Even an empanada, if I see them, like that's a good enough substitute. I'm getting that. Like there's some things
Yeah.
like that. If I see them on a menu or we go somewhere and they have them, I'm going to get one. It takes me back to that. And it was such a fond memory and it was really good. And I was pretty picky. So I was happy when I found things that I really liked. Had some odd things that I like too. Like I would eat ramen just dry. I would unwrap that hard noodle pack and just crunch into it and eat it. I enjoyed it. The other thing I did one summer is I got hooked on. My parents had this like big can, like a coffee, big old school Folgers can size container of powdered country time lemonade. And it was the kind where you take a scoop, you put it in a pitcher, you mix it down, and I would just raw dog that. I'd go in the kitchen
Oh
and I'd take a
God.
scoop and just put it in my mouth. And I ate the whole canister of it over one summer. And I remember thinking I couldn't stop
Oh
myself
my
from doing
God.
it. My mouth was all raw inside. And I was probably like 8. And I remember thinking, like, this is what it's like to be addicted to drugs. I couldn't stop eating it, man. It's like I went until I scraped it out. And then my mom, I don't know, a couple months later was like, oh, what? The lemon ate it in the can. Like, well,
Yeah.
mom, I ate it.
Yeah, you're the early dry scooper, dude. All these kids dry scooping their
Yeah.
pre-workouts or electrolytes
Yes.
now.
That was me
So
100%.
that's
Um,
hilarious.
as an older teenager, I started dating my wife when I was 17. She wasn't my wife's then, but her mom is an amazing cook, can make any kind of Mexican dish you could possibly think of. And up until that point, we had Mexican food in Stockton, and it's not bad in Stockton. It's decent, but it was just the basic stuff like give me a burrito, which isn't purely Mexican, or we get some chicken enchiladas or something like that. But when I started going to her house, she would make sopes, chili relleno, and all these dishes, tamales stuffed with chili rellenos, like these things that I didn't even know existed before. And that really put a big love in my heart for Mexican food. When I really had it in someone's home, knew how to make it, like, wow, this is amazing. There's not, you know, a pool of gravy on it, like most restaurants will do. This was just pure stuff. So whenever I see those kinds of things, especially Chilerianos, I'll try them. I'm always disappointed. It's never like hers, but I always try it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a soft spot for Mexican food, right?
Oh
For
yeah,
sure.
100%.
I mean, I do too. I mean, my wife's Mexican as well, so like I've been exposed to it. And it's just like right now is tamale season, so like
Right.
everyone's making tamales, and yeah, there's a ton of different stuff with Stockton. Growing up in Stockton, and a lot of people don't know, I will tell you, I'm based in Stockton right now, and I would have never been able to tell you that ever. And Tim is like, I can't believe you're there, because Tim is now based in Nashville, if you guys don't know. But I would have never been able to tell you that this would happen. But now that I'm asking, is like, are there some places that you ate at in Stockton? We'll go both ways. We'll go places you ate at that were really good and they're probably not there anymore. And then maybe some places that are still there and you're like, hey, these are freaking awesome.
Yeah, for sure. The other food that I forgot to mention that I always like, and I was picky, but I always liked Chinese food. I always loved Chinese food. And the awesome thing about Stockton is, in a lot of California's this way, if it just wasn't like, let's go get Chinese, it was, let's go get Cantonese, or let's go get Szechuan, or let's go get Peking style. Like, you could find multiple styles of Chinese food. And we had this Cantonese Chinese restaurant not too far from our house, and it was called Canton Gardens, and it was amazing. It used to be a gas station that they converted into this restaurant. And you could kind of tell when you started looking around, you're like, this is, especially the front outside of it. But man, they had tremendous food. We ate many, many meals there. Unfortunately, they're not around anymore, but that was a real fantastic place. I have a lot of fond memories of going there. Places that are still there that I seriously miss, and every time I go back to Stockton, I try to get through there if I can. The last trip, I didn't get to make any of those stops. It was just a quick in and out. But there's a deli called John's Deli, Gians, and originally John started it. That was the father, and it used to be downtown Stockton. When I was real young, my dad had a little office downtown Stockton, and we would take a walk over to John's Deli. And I remember it as a child because the smell of the cheese in there was so strong that it smelled bad to me. And I'm like, man, this store smells bad. But they made Italian sandwiches, and they were basic. Even to this day, they are basic sandwiches. But there's something about the bread, there's something about the cheese, something about the meat that I can't get past. And it was delicious then. Eventually, his son started working there, and one of his sons, Jeff, took over with one of his buddies who also started working there as a high schooler named Ryan. Jeff and Ryan run it to this day. It's off the Miracle Mile now. Great food there, great sandwiches. They make some homemade stuff there too. They'll have like a different pasta dish every day. You can go and buy the raviolis that they make there. They freeze them, and you can get the sauce and take it home and heat it up. It's just terrific stuff. They make pizza that's amazing. Every year when my kids would have their birthday in class celebration thing that they do for elementary school kids, we'd always bring pizza in from John's Deli, and it was a smash hit. And they always served it, and they still do, like Little Caesar style or Venetian style, which is just a square, but man, it was real good stuff. There is another place in Stockton that I think you've been to, which is really good, and that's the Geneva Bakery, which is just in the hood, on the corner of like Sierra Nevada, and I can't remember the cross street, but same thing there. They make great food, great sandwiches, great deli, just all around good stuff. Those two places really popped out to me. There used to be some really good, a good hamburger spot called Country Club Drive-In that was actually next door to the Cantonese restaurant. Sometimes we would go there, and they just had classic like drive-in burgers and fries. Just a real greasy spoon style place, but it sure was freaking good, man. Dave Wong's is still in town, and that's pretty good Chinese food. I like going there. I don't go into the restaurant too much. Restaurant's a little fancy, they're feeling themselves a little bit, but the deli around the side is great. You could just walk into the deli, order the same stuff, or you can order off stuff plates if you want something in there.
Yeah,
But they
get it
got
to
real
go.
great stuff. Yeah, that was always my move. They give it to you in one of those foil, almost like a TV dinner style container with a little piece of cardboard on top, and they crimp the edges. Man, so good. Garlic chicken. It was delicious,
Yeah.
man.
I
Yeah,
just went
good
there
stuff.
and got their Mongolian beef is what we got last time.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I'd gone into the restaurant and I was like, whoa, this is kind of like, I was not
Yeah,
expecting this because on the
right.
outside, it just looks like kind of a plain Jane, kind of a strip mall outside. And then you go in and you're just like, whoa, it's like fancy in here. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, those three I think that you mentioned are some staples because Gion's I still haven't been to, but Genova, walking in there, I knew it was good.
yeah.
The old door is still like creakily like wood, and I was like, oh, they kept it. I was like, I already knew. And then seeing all the construction guys, some blue collar guys walking in there, I was like, I know this place is going to be good because just by seeing that and just seeing the amount of people, everyone was so nice in there. And then I just got a couple of sandwiches made to order, and then boom, they knocked them out and just see ya,
Yeah.
and that place is great.
And it's got like the old world corner entrance where you enter diagonal from the corner of the street, not like
Yep.
on the left or the right. I always thought that was cool as a kid.
Yeah.
You didn't see many
Yeah.
places like that.
I mean,
There
I
was
don't
some
know.
good. Go ahead.
There's some good what?
There was some good pizza there too growing up. I do remember we went to Michael's Pizza a lot back when it was just a little tiny spot, and the family still kind of owned it. Now I think this is probably 20 years ago. Him and his wife did whatever they did, and she kind of owns it now with her new dude. But Michael had a brother, I believe, named Rick, who opened up Rick's Pizza, and then he sold it to an employee named Eric. And David so there's like David, Eric's, Michael's, Rick's up in Lodi. They're all kind of affiliated, same style pizza. Although Michael's they got rid of their ovens, the OG ovens that they used to have, and the pizza changed a little bit after that. But the real deal style is still Rick's up in Lodi. They make it just like they made it back then. It was just good pizza. They said it's new. Their claim was like New York style. They were just fooling everybody because it's not New York style pizza, not at all. But nobody in
Yeah.
Stockton knew. We're like, this is from New York. It's good, but
Yeah.
it's still good stuff. Yeah,
If you've never been, you're just like, cool, as long as it's good.
yeah. And a lot of pizza
Yeah.
in New York's not that good, to be honest with
No.
you. It's not. There's a few places that are like real well known, and the rest are just pretending.
Yeah, and I was talking to a previous guest, Howie, who owns Howie's Pizza in Howard Bolka, who owns Howie's Pizza in Palo Alto, across from Stanford. And he I was like, did you, before you opened your pizza restaurant, did you go around looking for, all the different pizza and what styles you were going to make? He's like, yeah. And I went to New York, and I went to, the mom and pops. I went to the little corner store. I went to all the little places. And he goes, a lot of them use the same ingredients. Use the same cheese, the same sauce, or same tomatoes that go in the sauce, and then make a similar dough with similar flour. And he's like, okay, all I need to do is put all that together, and then it'll be my style, but it'll just be consistently good, with those ingredients. I was like,
Right.
yeah. I mean, we're fortunate. Like, we've been San Francisco, LA, San Diego, New
Yeah.
York. Like, dude, just those levels to stuff now. There's pizza talk that Japan has the best pizza right now.
It's
There's
like,
guys that took a whole deep dive on it, and they're like, there's guys that are from Italy, and we got to talk about Italy too, because you just went
yeah.
there not too long ago. That it's really good there too, and I mean, it's yeah. So tell us about some travels. Yeah, let's get into some travels. Italy's probably your most recent one, but were there any other travels before that that you were just like, man, this food wise, it was Pretty
Yeah,
good, I'm sure.
yeah. I
You've been
think,
all over the place.
yeah. In the U.S., it seemed like, well, my dad is also a pastor of a church, and we traveled a lot to go to meetings, and we always drove. And we drive everywhere. We drove to Oklahoma, Arkansas, Montana, Oregon, Washington, all kinds of places, right? Um, I don't remember too much about food then really put off to me. Like, whoa, this is crazy good.
Yeah.
I did notice when I got older and I started driving over the Altamont Pass to go see Stella, 'cause she grew up in San Jose, that was a whole variety of food places that I had never eaten at or even experienced before. The first time I saw a Jollibee, which is like a Filipino style fast food restaurant, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I didn't even know
Yeah.
this existed, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would say when we got married in 2000, we both worked at Hewlett Packard at the time, and she was on a global team, and they had their annual meeting in Belgium, in Bruges. And we had just gotten married like 2 weeks before that. And so her boss said, hey, if you guys pay for Tim's airline ticket, we'll take care of everything else while he's out there. So, like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to work. So she'd go do her work stuff during the day, and I would rent a bicycle and just drive around and like eat stuff and do stuff. And the food was pretty good then. Like, I enjoyed it. I ate a lot of things that I hadn't eaten before. We ate rabbit, which I had not had up until that point, and it wasn't bad. We ate pigeon, which was really something different. And I don't remember it being terrible. I do remember almost every place I went, they would tell me if it was something that you could get in America, they would say, this is not like in America. Like, they wanted to make sure I knew, like, you're ordering this, but like, we don't make it like they make it in America.
Yeah.
The food was good there. That trip, we took a day trip into Paris and kind of did the touristy thing in Paris. But I do remember getting a baguette sandwich that was brilliant, and they had put a layer of butter inside of it. And at first, I thought it was mayo. Like, what I kind of felt that I was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, that's butter, that's butter. But that was delicious, man. I remember having that sandwich. But I would say my trip to Italy was probably the best when it came to food. I had high expectations for it just because it was somewhere that we've always wanted to go. And you always hear people rant and rave about how great it is. And so I was really looking forward to going, and it did not disappoint at all. It was fantastic. Two things really jumped to my mind. One is when we were in Rome, we took a walk to the area that's called the Jewish Ghetto, and we ate at just one of the alleyway restaurants was there. And I had, I believe it's called alla matriciana, which is a pasta that's made with pepper flake, and the cheese is, and it's was right on the tip of my tongue. It's not Fontina. I'll have to look it up. But it's made with a cheese and those peppers. But with those peppers, they put those pepper flakes in early, like right in the beginning, and so it kind of permeates the entire uh, flavor of the food, but it's not too overwhelming. It feels like it's pecorino cheese,
Okay.
and then you can use some people use bacon, but they use the other or
Pancetta?
pancetta,
Oh,
um,
guanciale?
guanciale. Yeah, either
Yeah.
one of those two. I think we made this dish together actually over COVID. I think
I
we
th-
did. Maybe we didn't, but I think we did. And because I think you got the guanciale. I think
yeah,
you were
I
able to
remember.
get it.
Yeah, because we were talking about. I think this is the dish. Yeah, and I don't know if were we making. Yeah, I think you did. You picked the recipe, and then I was able to find
Yeah,
some.
yeah. And I was
Obviously,
kind of jealous because I couldn't find it. I was like, oh, I got
yeah,
pancetta.
yeah. I mean, it's a good replacement. I mean, but yeah, guanciale. is like the can't even think,
Or
the
peak, I guess.
cheek,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
cheek. So it has that uh it's like just fattier. That's all it is. It's
Yeah.
like it's got more marbling and it's super
Yeah.
soft. But yeah,
So
I mean that was fun. We'll
that
get into
dish
our
was,
COVID cooking
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. That dish was amazing. And I remember telling myself, like, I'm going to learn how to make this dish. Like, I'm going to learn this dish because this dish is fantastic. Super simple to make, not very hard. Um, so that was something that popped out to me. And then the other was, so in this trip, we started in Rome and then we spent a few days there. And then we went to Florence, just spent a few days there. I really enjoyed Florence. It was great. I just think that I enjoyed Rome so much that Florence, and some people have the opposite view. Some people don't like Rome because it's kind of busy. I enjoyed it. I really liked Florence. And then we went down to Venice, which for me was we ended the trip in Venice and that was outstanding. Maybe one of the best meal experiences I've ever had in my life there. Um, and part of it's connected to jujitsu. And so that could be part of the reason. But on the last day there, through an Air Force friend of mine from Stockton that I've known for a long time, he was stationed in Italy. And he always said, if you ever go to Italy, like, let me know. I could get you a seminar out there. And so it's kind of like, okay, when is this going to happen? Right. Well,
Right.
I was like, hey, man, I'm going to Italy. Like, give me a seminar. And he said, well, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going to Rome, I'm going to Florence, I'm going to Venice. He's like, Venice, I can pay you. So I booked a seminar out there and I did the seminar, had a great time. They were super, super nice. It was super fun to train with the Italians. It was awesome, man. And afterwards, one of the students owned a little restaurant in Venice. And so he said, hey, after class, you and your wife and me and some of the guys, we're going to my restaurant. My employees are going to stay a little later and keep it open. And we're gonna have dinner together. And so we got there around 9. And, he's like, no menus. I already got it set up. I'm running it. And it was just, they started with like almost like a charcuterie style in the beginning. And it was just cheeses and meats and honey.
Antipasti, yeah.
Yes, antipasti. Yeah. And that was amazing. And then it was just dish after dish after dish. And it wasn't all pasta. There were some meats in there and some fish and different things. And I just got to sample so much stuff with such a cool crew of people that it really, really stands apart in my, is one of my favorite just overall dining experiences. Not just because the food was good, but the setting was good. The people were awesome. And those kinds of things you never forget. They're strongly imprinted in your head. I think food does that though. And it's like you're taking in the visual, but you're also like consuming something for your body at the same time. And it just ingrains that into your brain.
It does. It does. And like, to hear you, I knew as soon as when you said, oh, one of the students owns his own restaurant, I was like, oh, here we go. Cause it's like, you're going to get carte blanche. Everything is coming at you, like, and that's the best, right? When you know someone that works at a restaurant and they're
Oh,
like, hey, you better come through, and you take forever, of course, to take them up on it. And then when you finally do, they're like, hey, I've been waiting for you. Here's our latest dish today. Here's, and I've been lucky enough to been to some restaurants where my friends are working or they're the head chef, and you just see dishes just show up and you're like, I
yeah.
didn't order this. And they're like, the chef. So
Yeah.
here's
So you
our
did order it.
special. Yeah.
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 And like, it's so nice, right? I mean, it does, it's kind of a bonus, but it's like, it provides that experience. And you're right. Like, we've had meals together, so it's easy for us to remember them because it's like, yeah, we had great conversation, but it's like, oh, we had this dish, and getting into our dishes for COVID cooking. Um, we started, I kind of wrote some of them down, and I think we did, now that you mentioned the pasta dish, I think we've done 4 of them. Is that correct?
I think so. I wonder if I can guess them, if I can remember them.
Okay. I'll
Let me,
put
let
you,
me
let's
see.
see if you, okay.
Okay. So we did the uh, ramen style dish,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
The
do remember that.
yakisoba.
yakisoba. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was delicious. And then we did the alla matriciana,
Mm-hmm.
and we did the chicken nochi.
Of course.
And I'm trying to remember. Hold on.
It's the first one we did.
And this was one you picked.
Yes.
Grilled
And
cheese.
I'll get, yep, with
We did grilled
fresh tomato
cheese.
soup too.
Yes, dude. That was delicious as well. And you gave me a
Yeah.
real easy one too. You're like, we're gonna see if
Yeah,
this
well,
guy can
I
cook
didn't give
anything in the kitchen.
it was
Grilled
a lob.
cheese.
It was a lob, but it was a good lob because it was like from I got it from Chef Roy Choi and John Favreau doing their chef show after
That's
the
right.
movie. Because they did the movie Chef where John Favreau was like a food truck owner and wanted to be a chef and stuff. And then they, he learned from Roy Choi. Shout out to Chef Roy Choi. Eventually be on here. And um Roy was like going through all the recipes from the movies, like, hey, let's just do it. They made a Netflix show out of it, and like they did all the recipes, and that was one of them. I saw that, I was like, oh, that grilled cheese looks great. There's like three
Yeah.
kinds of cheese in there. They really like butter the bread so you get the crust, and then they made a fresh tomato soup with it. So I was like, oh, that's a good one to start with.
What were the cheeses?
So there's all personal preference, but I know for sure there's a cheddar or like American, and I know there's like Gruyere is like the
Yeah.
kind of the one that kind of like steps it up a notch. So if
Yeah.
you do Gruyere, cheddar, and then usually one other one, like I like white cheddar and
Yeah.
you know how as a kid you don't like things bitter, but now I like sharp cheddar.
Yeah.
Or some of the other cheeses, but Gruyere I think is like the steps it up a notch. So I think we did cheddar, a white cheese, probably the white cheddar, and then Gruyere, and that kind of like really takes it up a notch.
Yeah. I do remember the Gruyere. That was good, man. My wife was impressed. She's like, okay,
Yeah.
you elevated a grilled cheese sandwich in a way that like
Yeah.
everybody
And
in
then
the house
also
will eat.
like I probably told you to try to find a good sourdough, a country loaf sourdough.
You did. Yep.
Which is another thing, not a fake sourdough that's like made in like 2 minutes where it's like all enriched. It's like if you find the old school country loaf, it's night and day for that too. So like that, that bread tastes, I hate to say, but it tastes real, like
Yeah. Right. Well, it
but
is.
it's
Yeah.
but it bakers started going back to that because like that's the original basic bread that was, like you see the old pictures where they're ripping it off and passing it around. That's the bread. Like that's what it
Right.
was. I mean, they made it, that's what they made back then, and it's still made today. So like people that if you go into a bakery or pastry shop and you see a country loaf, you're like, all right, this place knows what's up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think at this point, with all the crazy, stupid ingredients that are going into food these days, like it's nice to see flour, salt, water,
Yeah.
and a good sourdough is really good and makes up for it.
And I think there's a difference too. Like, you can make pancakes at home with the basic ingredients that you have at home, and you can mix it up and make it, and it takes you 4 extra minutes to do. And I think it's better for you than pouring it out of a box that's some ready mix that's got a bunch of stuff in there. And maybe there's an argument that like pancakes aren't good for you in general, but if you're gonna eat them, it's better to make them from scratch. It's gonna be better for you than it is to get it out of a box or a bag. So,
I mean,
I'm with
there's
that.
ways. There's other ways. I've been playing with this one recipe that's like bodybuilder fitness guy was making, and he's like he makes them with eggs, oats, and like cottage cheese, and then just blends that up, and that's his batter for the pancakes.
What is it about cottage cheese? I notice it's often used as a substitute for dishes like that when they try to make them healthier. Is there some binding agent to it, or what is it?
It is thick, so it does like make it can make it is thick like yogurt and stuff like that. So like It's good. One, it's pretty healthy because it does have some protein in there, and it's usually pretty clean. You know, it's just milk curds basically. And so if you like it, some people don't like it, but yeah, you can use it as a supplement for stuff, and especially like people that are keto. That's like a
Yeah.
perfect keto thing. And then yeah, I've seen people make God, they make all kinds of stuff. There's this one guy on Instagram that does all these keto dishes, and like he'll just mix chicken and then cheese, and then you can make these like cheese chicken balls. And yeah, the cottage cheese is like this binder, like you said, like it just puts it all together. But yeah, I've made those pancakes and they came out pretty good.
Yeah.
I was impressed, and I was like, okay, here's one that's like super, pretty healthy with just oats and stuff. So like I've been playing around with those kinds of dishes too. But like I got to ask you too, like with all the cooking, what do you make for the family? What's your go-to meal for the family?
So, you know, building on what you talked about, how your mom had to deal with 3 dudes in the house who were eating through everything. Same situation here. Except I'm one of the dudes who's eating through everything. But both, Nate is 18 now and Noah's 21,
Yeah.
and they're both bigger than me. They're both more active than I am. They both grapple and do all kinds of busy stuff, and so these dudes can eat. So we're making a trip to Costco every week just to restock the stuff. And we've gotten a lot better over the years about not overbuying, because it's easy to overbuy. And then you know, food is interesting because if you eat the same food, even if it's good, if you eat it too much, you'll stop eating it. And I would notice like, hey, if I make this too often or I make too much of it, then it's going to go to waste. It's going to sit in the refrigerator and nobody's going to eat the leftovers. But staples here, usually what I do is every week I go to Costco and I get a pack of steak. I used to get the ribeye, but it's so damn expensive now. Now I've backed it down to New York, which is still, first world problem. Like I
Yeah.
can't get ribeye. But I always get a batch of steaks and I throw them on the grill on my patio, and I'll cook them usually on Sunday or Monday. And once they've cooled a little, I will just slice them into strips. And that seems to be the best way for my family to consume it. If I just leave it as a whole steak, it'll often sit in the refrigerator. It's like, what are you guys doing? But when we slice them up, people grab them, a couple slices here and there, and they travel well. So we make breakfast burritos out of them, make fajitas out of it. I'll, do all kinds of stuff like that. So that always gets pretty much thoroughly finished. But we do that just about every week. Lately, I've been making a pasta dish every week, like a spaghetti, pesto, something that will kind of hold in the refrigerator. I believe that spaghetti tastes better the next day. Like it tastes good when it's fresh, but when you let all that sauce soak into those noodles and it just gets like, and you take it out the next day and put some olive oil and some garlic in a pan and you fry that up and oh my gosh, it's so good. So we
Yep.
do a lot of that. We're big on leftovers. So we usually have leftovers once or twice during the week. And then the other thing that I've been messing around with, which is a simple bonehead, easy meal to make, but is getting like these fresh tortillas from Costco. You throw them on the comal, you heat them up, and these are flour, and they just boom, boom, they're ready pretty fast. And I'll serve that with some white rice and maybe some of the steak from earlier in the week chopped up, and we'll throw a slice of like pepper jack in there with a little teriyaki. And it's almost like a wrap, except it's just folded like a ghetto taco. It's not real nice and neat, but those are popular. Those are so popular that I was sending him to school with my son, and his wrestling teammates were like, yo, can you and your dad make an extra one? Because that looks pretty good. So now when I pack them, I'll pack one extra. So it's like, you could be nice to one kid today and hook them up with
Yeah.
extra food. I buy lots of eggs. I eat eggs. I could eat eggs every day. Sometimes I'll make breakfast for dinner. I'll just come home and be like, I don't feel like doing heavy duty cooking, so I'm gonna make some eggs and bacon. Who's down? And most of the time, everyone's like, I want some.
Yeah.
I'm pretty big on eating eggs. Yeah, that's not super complicated. Once in a while, like for Thanksgiving, I had the itch to cook, and we had some folks over that are also new to Nashville, don't have a much family in town. So we just kind of had like a Thanksgiving like that. And I ate, I mean, a dinner or going to a dinner when there's not enough food for people just to eat as much as they want. And you're kind of like, everyone's kind of watching, like, don't take too much. Like, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a feast. And so I put ribeye on the grill. I made 2 lasagnas. I made chicken nochi. We had a smoked turkey that we got from a friend of ours who runs a charity event, and they they smoke like 200 turkeys. So we had one of those for the turkey. I made garlic mashed potatoes, cream corn. What else? I made another pasta dish for my son's girlfriend who's vegan. And to be careful not to cross contaminate. But we did all right with that. Yeah, it was just a feast, man. I made 3 times too much food. Like we sent everybody home with tons of leftovers, and we still had quite a bit of food in the refrigerator that we just threw out like a few days ago. We're like, okay, this Supreme Court's not getting eaten, guys. Like it's time to bounce it, or some mashed potatoes hanging around in there too. So yeah, we always get a rotisserie chicken. I just feel like it's versatile. As soon as we get the trick with rotisserie chicken for us is as soon as I get that Costco chicken, and you got to go to Costco because the Costco chickens are yoked. They're like, I would put a Costco rotisserie up against any other rotisserie, anything, man. They're on performance enhancing chickens, dude, but they can whoop a Whole Foods chicken. They can whoop your grocery store chicken. You could put 3 grocery store chickens up against it. A Costco chicken's coming home with the victory. They're getting the tap every time.
Not only that, they're $5 too.
I know, right?
The best meal in town. Yeah.
The trick for us is when I get that thing home, I shred it immediately. I carve all the meat off of it. And if we're going to eat some, then we have some, and then I store it. If I store it bone in and put the whole container in the fridge, it doesn't taste the same when it's been cold, it sat all night, and you pull it out the next day, and now you got to peel it off. It feels like it, and this might be counterintuitive, and I might be wrong. It feels like it dries out to me. It feels like it gets like refrigerator-y, like you could tell this has been in the fridge versus carving it all up and just storing the meat that way. So that's a move we do too. And then I just use that for stuff during the week. So
yeah, I think we got a couple dishes lined up for when we cook again. But one of the ones that we've done with rotisserie chicken is flautas. You ever done flautas?
I mean, but they're probably not too hard to make, I would think.
So they're not too hard. I think the most meticulous part is just having the chicken shredded, and then you got to roll them in the tortilla, and kind of make like a skinny, basically what becomes a flauta. And then you usually got to like toothpick them or hold them tight, fry them so they crisp up, and then pull them. And then that's the most tedious part. And then you just make all your toppings and whatever else you want with it. Sometimes lettuce, cabbage, pico de gallo or salsa, and then some avocado. And if you want sour, and once you have all that, and you have like 20 flautas ready, dude, you're done. It's a meal for sure.
We make a dish that we learned from Stella's mom called tacos dorado, and it's kind of similar, but you take corn tortillas, and she'll make them either with chicken or mashed potatoes, and you put 2 toothpicks in it, and you fry that up just like you would a flauta. And then you do the same thing. You get some toppings and you eat it like that. But yeah, I really like flauta.
We're using corn too.
Yeah, it's almost identical then. Yeah, the mashed potatoes in the tortilla was something I had never seen until I met her. And it's a strong move, man. It's real good. Yeah,
it's very good. Your mashed potatoes are a move too. Like ever since I learned how to make like kind of restaurant style creamy mashed potatoes, but with Yukon Gold potatoes instead of the regular white potatoes, dude, it's great. Like, and then you have it later too.
Yeah. What's the trick for your mashed potato?
I think boiling them to their like super soft, where like you can, stick a fork all the way through, so they're soft when you go to mash them up. They're peeled. I
Yeah.
leave a very, very little left.
Yeah.
They're peeled, boiled, and then when you go to mash them, heavy cream, butter, like unsalted butter. Then you use sea salt and then olive oil. That
Oh,
mix, yeah, that mix right there, and then you get a hand blender and just burr that thing, and it gets to like just this like just whipped consistency.
whip. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and you can dip your spoon in there, and it hangs on the spoon, and you can taste it, and you're like,
And
it's ready. Whether it's got enough salt and all that, it's yeah. Like you serve that, you could serve that by itself, but like, yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff with it, with leftovers. But like, yeah, yeah, we'll make that one day too.
yeah, I like
That's an
mashed
easy
potatoes.
one. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It sounds complicated, but it's not once you do it, and it's
It's
fun.
really not. Probably the most tedious part is the hand blender, honestly.
Yeah,
Like boiling
really.
potatoes or peeling the potatoes, maybe. That's kind of
Yeah.
annoying, because you're like
Yeah, and
going
there's
through that.
actually and shout out to Chef Eduardo Garcia. He was teaching something where we had to peel potatoes. I forgot what we were making. It was, I don't know. Can't think of it right now, but the peels, you can actually toast those up.
Mm,
And so he like takes olive oil or avocado oil, and he has a jalapeno seasoning that has like
and
dried jalapeno and like oregano in it and stuff, and salt, and he'll toast them in the toaster oven or in the oven for like 15 minutes, and now you have these crispy potato skins.
oh, those are
So
good. Yeah.
that's like something to munch on while you're like making the rest of your potatoes. So like
Yeah.
you peel them, and if you peel them where you get little bigger peels, like all of a sudden you have this little snack. And I've made those before, and I mean sometimes we'll just compost them, but like I'll make them and like, oh, that's a little snack while you're cooking snack.
Yeah. Yeah. They're good. Potato skins are good, man.
Yeah. I put out some questions to ask you. I already asked one because Liz had the question about what your go-to meal was for the family on Instagram yesterday. And Jessica from 10th Planet Stockton
Love Jessica.
asks, of course, she's awesome. And shout out to the whole team there. Why LaCroix sparkling water?
Well,
Do you have a
funny you should
fascination?
mention. I have
Yeah.
one right here that I'm drinking.
Yeah. Not sponsored, but
Yeah,
let us know if you want to.
someday. Yeah. I'm I am jockeying hard for a LaCroix sponsorship. Like I would probably take that over cash, to be honest with you. Um, man, I I love carbonated drinks. I want it to feel like I put my tongue on one of those. Is that a 9-volt battery? Those square batteries?
Yeah.
You ever
Yeah.
do that? Like
I did.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's good. It still works. That's how
Uh-huh.
I want my carbonation to be. Um,
Mm.
love it. In fact, there's a mineral water from Mexico called Mineral, and it is. Everyone goes Topo Chico, but Mineral is the the move, man. You could leave the
Okay.
bottle cap off of that overnight on the counter and come back, and it's still more carbonated than
Oh.
any fresh drink you could open up. It's got to be illegal. It's overly carbonated. My favorite. Um, but I really like that. And then I don't want the sugar, so I'm not trying to drink Coca-Cola all day.
Right. Yeah.
And if I drink like a cola, I just drink a real Coke classic. Like I'm not messing around with Coke Zero and Diet and all that. It's just like, why am I gonna? For me, that's a lesser version of it. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna have the real thing and I'm gonna enjoy it and eat pizza or a cheeseburger with it or something. But
Mhm.
I really like LaCroix and mineral water in general. Hope it's not bad for you. If it is bad for you, I'm gonna be the guy that you find out because I probably drink 6 or 7 of them a day, probably. Like I
Whoa.
drink a lot of mineral water. It's just like a treat in my head. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's 10 a.m. I got this task to do. I'm gonna go grab a mineral water. And we have a little we have a refrigerator, and then we have one of those under the counter, like little mini bar fridges in our kitchen. And we just stock that with almost always mineral water. It takes up like 80% of the space in there. And I'm probably addicted to it because I'm very on top of how much we, and that's one of the things we always get at Costco is like get 2 cases of mineral water. Well, we already have a case. I know I don't want to run out though. I keep a couple of them in my backpack just in case, because I have a little mini fridge at the gym that's stocked with them. But, you know, my guys dip into there every once in a while, and I'll go in and like, there's no mineral water. So I keep a couple in my backpack. I probably should drink more still water, to be honest with you, but it's water, right? I mean, you know, better than drinking soda or coffee. I drink a little bit of coffee, probably a little too much, but not as much as I used to. I'm pretty hardcore on the mineral water, man.
Yeah, so that was the main question from the peanut gallery. But
everybody knows me by the mineral water, I swear. My students out in Nashville will bring me different flavors if they find a new flavor. One of my students brought me beach plum, which is LaCroix flavor that's delicious that I didn't know existed yet. And he brought one in, and I'm like, whoa, dude, this is life changing. Like, this is a level up. And I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. You brought that over
that's right.
When you were here. Yeah.
That's right. Which was
that
a great meal, by the way. It was good. Yeah.
You're welcome.
The food you made that day was fantastic, man.
Yeah. And I'm actually, we found a banh mi place, which I don't know if was here when you were here, but they're good. And they make those pork egg rolls too, which are delicious. And if you guys haven't noticed, when you listen to this podcast, if you are hungry, you're in deep trouble. Just so you guys know.
I ate right before we came on.
Yeah. I at least had breakfast. But so the meal I made, that's another one we can go over later recipe wise, but if you guys didn't see it, but I just did a crispy chicken thigh with some rice and like a cucumber salad, and cucumber salad varies with what's on hand. I just did like a kind of Japanese style dressing with like vinegar and soy sauce and stuff. But I had in the fridge that goes really well with the chicken. And you can use this, you end up using this on everything. You can actually use it as a salad dressing, but it's this cilantro yogurt sauce. If you don't like cilantro, then you could change it to basil or parsley or something else. But cilantro yogurt sauce, it's kind of something you'd have on a gyro or shawarma or any of those kind of Greek, like more Greek dish. But like, it's got cilantro, yogurt, lemon, and then just some seasoning in there, like cumin and salt and pepper and stuff. And then like, boom, it's like, it works really well over the chicken. I don't know what it is, because I didn't really like yogurt a long time ago, and now I love it. And now it just hits on everything. So I got to teach you how to make that sauce. But like, it's so good. I wrote a recipe for Firecracker Farm with it, and I was like, it's so good. You just make some flatbread and chicken and then now we stock it in the fridge. I'll get a big yogurt and then just make it, and then it's sitting in there, and we're having steak today. You can throw it on that. Oh, you can throw it on steamed broccoli and just done. Oh,
I gotta get that.
Raw carrots, just dip it in there. It just adds another element. But yeah, I was bummed because I was like, I wanted the guys to try that just to see somebody else's reaction, my enjoyment to you guys, I really enjoy cooking. So it was great having you guys on and having the coaches, and shout out to you for letting me train at 10th Planet as well. Like, I mean, everyone's great there, man. And I'm having a good time.
Yeah. It's a real good crew out there, man. It makes me happy that you're there. Like, I was so shocked when you informed me that you were going to Stockton. I was like, wait a minute, man, this whole time I've lived here, and then I leave, and now you move here. Like, what? That was great food though. But they're a real good crew, man. I love those folks out there. They're 100%. They're solid people.
Have you had and we'll get into a little bit of your jiu-jitsu journey. You've been on a bunch of podcasts talking about it, but have you had are there some like post-workout, post-rolling meals that you're just like, oh dude, like this is my go-to craving especially after like a long session or like 10-round Tuesday or something? Is there something where you're like, dude, we're having freaking wings today or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I think mostly on Sundays after I do Sunday open mat, then that's when I usually have a pretty big appetite. For some reason, after 10-round Tuesday, is I've gotten a little older. I don't have as big of an appetite late at night. It's like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm like, man, I trained hard, but I don't know if I want to eat a cheeseburger and onion rings right now because I
Yeah,
know I'm going
that's
to
true.
regret it when I get up tomorrow morning, you know. But my my problem is that I like junk food and food that's not healthy. I like it a lot. I like cheeseburgers and fries and pizza and, you know, fried food. And the South is big on that, you know. So oftentimes after a hard training session, you know, I'll go get some cheeseburgers and down those and get some fries or something like that. You know, same fast food places are out here that are out there. Uh, Trying to think if there's anything specifically different. I will say this, when I lived in California, I hated Sonic. It was terrible. It was not good. Sonic back here is different. I don't know what they're doing different. I don't know if they have like different food suppliers, if they put more love into it or whatever it is. Sonic out here is delicious. So that's been a real weak spot for me. And there's like 16 of them on the way home from the gym. You know, super
Yeah.
easy to get a Sonic. There is a place up the street from us called Urban Market. And Urban Market is it's a restaurant and a health food store, kind of with a wine bar, kind of all in this big building. Real nice, real good food. Their menu is super healthy, and they put the source of all their ingredients. Their menu changes from time to time. But they sell these birria tacos that you dip in like the Mexican au jus sauce, you know. And after training, man, whenever I get a chance to go down there and get a couple of those fried beef tacos with that sauce, I get this birria, right?
Consomme.
Yeah, it's
Birria, yeah.
so good, man.
Tim can't roll
Uh,
his R's.
birria, birria.
There you go.
uh,
Yeah, and the consomme that they've boiled the meat in, yeah,
oh, dude, it's so good.
that's good
They do
stuff.
that really well back here. That particular spot is legit. Um, so yeah, that's probably my big go-to if I get the chance. I've taken Mike there. I've taken Dennis there when they've come out. I took, I think we took Boogie there because he's a pretty healthy eater and he
Yeah.
doesn't eat. I believe he's vegetarian if I remember right. When he first came to Stockton, I took him to the barbecue place on the Miracle Mile, Fat City. And he's like, and he was totally gracious, like totally cool. I think
That's
you
where we
guys
went after the
went.
seminar. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And he's like,
I was
oh,
trying to
I'm
remember where we went, so you would know. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Fat City.
Fat City.
Okay.
He's like, oh, I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, what? I said, it
Oops.
was like a pure meat restaurant.
Yeah.
Luckily, they had like mac and cheese and fries and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, man,
Well,
good
I
stuff
mean,
though.
that kind of takes us into Nashville. You're
Yeah,
in Nashville. You've been there a while already. What's some of you got some favorites out there?
yeah. Um, One is we found a really good Italian restaurant, and it's kind of hard to find. There's a few, but there's a lot of commercial Italian. You know, just like Maggiano's or Buca di Beppo or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if you have a grandma that cooks real authentic Italian food, you can't go to Macaroni Grill. It's like
No.
not it won't work for you. You know, there
Sacrilegious.
yes, dude. There's an Italian. It okay. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. They do a lot of catering out of this spot, right? So they have almost like an industrial style kitchen, where they can make lots and lots of food, but they also serve diners locally, and they have a few places to sit, and you can go up and order. It's called Mama Mila's. It's in Columbia. It's about 35-minute drive, and we'll take the hike down there on the weekend and drive down just to get their lasagna. They make a sauce there. Now, this is not a traditional Italian name. It's called crack sauce. And, it's so damn good, man. We'll often order a batch of crack sauce just to take home when we go. They have really fantastic food. I've enjoyed eating there quite a bit. Outside of that, hot chicken's really famous here in Nashville. That's kind of like the food they've adapted.
The thing, yeah.
I'm not a super spicy hot eater just for the sake of like, hey, I want to just have something to punish myself. But I did go down to a hot chicken spot in Nashville, and I want to say it was called Milton's. It was in East Nashville. The two big ones out here are Hattie B's and Prince's, and that's the big argument. Who's better? Oh, the original Prince's, the original Hattie B's. They're good. They make good food. It's not terrible. And I often go to those places and don't get the hot chicken. I'm just like, I'll have the fried chicken without the heat. They're like, what is wrong with you, dude? But we went to Milton's, and it's a hole in the wall. There's nowhere to sit inside. You walk in, and it's basically a concrete style floor that has not been refinished in probably 50 years. And there's a hole in the window. And when you first walk in, it's almost like, what is this? Right? Because you don't see the hole in the window that you order in. And then you're kind of like, oh, there it is. You go up there, and they have painted on the wall, faded too, there are no refunds because you ordered your food too spicy. And they have a spicy ranking, and it goes from like 1 to 5. And 5 is like the hottest you're going to get. And so I was like, I don't want any spice. What is no spice? What is that? Oh, that's 1. Okay, I'll have a 1. It was so spicy. I can only eat 2 bites of it. I could not eat the food, man. I couldn't do it. And Omar was with me, and we had one other person with us, and I can't remember who it was. And it might have been Mike. They gobbled it up. They ate it, and I was sweating from the 2 bites that I ate. And I was like, you guys can have mine, man. And then I walked next door to this little Asian fusion place and ordered an appetizer, sat at the bar.
Oh, man.
Well, they had a beer. Yeah, it was too much, but they claim that they are the original spicy chicken. And I tend to believe them, to be quite honest with you, because it's been there since the 50s. It's definitely not something that cropped up in the 80s or 90s. And kind of when, I think Nashville really started taking off probably 10 or 15 years ago. And it's grown a lot in the last 10 years. Before that, it always had Broadway, but, Broadway is like the Strip in Las Vegas. Like there's no parking spaces. You can't pull your car into a spot and park in front of a casino and go in. But it used to be that way. You could pull right up in front of a bar, park your car, get out and go in. And it wasn't that big of a deal. Now it's completely like to both sides of the street. Often they close the streets down to traffic because there's so many people. So, but yeah, those places are pretty good. Hard to find good Chinese food out here. There's a lot of combination restaurants where it's like Chinese, sushi, and Thai. And for me, that's a no-go. That's a red flag. If you're doing multiple things, man, you better be freaking good, dude. If you're doing Mexican and Italian, listen, there better be a Mexican and an Italian in the kitchen cooking, But a lot of times it feels like it's turnkey. Like they just bought into a franchise that they can put their own label on and serve. So, that's a little bit of a disappointment. Mexican's a little tricky to find. My experience has been that most of the Latin people here are not from Mexico. They're from Venezuela, Cuba. I've met some Cubans actually, Puerto Rico. And then they open Mexican restaurants and they make what they think you think Mexican food is. And it's just not super great. But if they just would make their style of food, make Puerto Rican food, because then it's going to be good. We found a good El Salvadorian place that's in East Nashville. East Nashville has the good food spots. It's considered the rough part of town, but dude, It's
You're
not.
from Stockton.
It's not rough, dude. I mean, there's some rough pockets, but it's not that bad at all. And they have great food in that area. So yeah, but I would say Mama Mila's has been a big hit with us. Really happy we
Yeah.
found that place.
Have you been to any of Chef Sean Brock's places at all?
No, what are the names of his places?
I know one's after his grandma. God, I should look them up, but they are.
Here,
Yeah. If you do Sean Brock,
let me
my
see
bad,
where it's
Sean. He's got a lot of restaurants, but
Joyland and
his
Audrey and June.
yeah.
But I should check them out.
Yeah, so Joyland like is his fun play off of fast food.
Mhm.
So that's like a burger joint. Yeah, Audrey and June. Yep, those are the other ones. Yep.
There,
Yeah, the
well,
Audrey and June I think are pretty fancy, but
yeah. I got, we went to the Bourbon Steakhouse when we first came out, which is a
Mhm.
fancy steakhouse down here. And I actually had the experience of our waiter being a jiu-jitsu dude. And I did not know him. We were fresh out here. And it was kind of like, hey, we made the move. We actually did it. We're here. Let's just like go have a really nice dinner together. So Stella and I booked a reservation. Bourbon Steakhouse is up at the top of the W Hotel. I think it's the W. It might be the Westin. It's one of those. And our waiter comes out and he's like just talking, making small talk. Hey, we just moved here, blah, 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 blah. Somehow jiu-jitsu comes up. And we'd been out here for probably 3 weeks. And I said, hey, I know a guy that does jiu-jitsu out here. His name is Jerome Bray. And he's like, you know Jerome? I'm like, yeah, I got to meet him. We're not like best friends. I just met him. But yeah, we trained together a couple times. Cool guy. And he's like, Jerome's my homie, dude. Like, he's my guy. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He started sending dishes out to the table, which was awesome because it's not cheap there either. And it was delicious, man. And it was just like dish after dish after dish. We ate so great that night. That was pretty good. The other place that's really good, and the ambiance is good, and it's totally not in line with the rest of the Nashville restaurants because most things here are Southern style or steakhouse style. There is it feels like a 1940s New York steakhouse bar. It's called, the name's just slipped out of my head. How can I gotta look it up. No, I can't believe I just had it in my head.
I don't know about you, but Tim has a ton of episodes on Inside BJJ, but does your brain just shut off when the mic turns on?
Sometimes. Skull's
Right?
Rainbow Room.
Skull's Rainbow Room. All right.
Skull's Rainbow Room. And it's super hard to get a table there. They only book reservations out in a 2-week window. So if you want to get reservations, you have to be online in like 11:55, 2 weeks rolling window out from the date you want to go. And as soon as it hits midnight, you have to start reserve, and then they'll fill up in like 8 minutes and they're gone.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So we could not get a reservation there. So we went down there. It's in Printer's Alley, which is off of the downtown area. Stella and I went down there one day in the daytime, like 11 a.m. And our plan was we're going to go inside this place and figure out what in the hell do you have to do to actually get a reservation. We could not get a reservation. And so the lady that was there told us like, hey, you got to be online like right before midnight, 2 weeks out from the date you want, and you'll get it that way. And then she gave us a tip because they do a burlesque show there. And it's like on Friday and Saturday night, it's like a classic old school burlesque show.
Nice.
Not raunchy or racy really, right? It's almost like the art of burlesque. There's a jazz band that plays. There's no country music going on. It's an anomaly in Nashville. And she told us you book it. And then if you want like the stage tables that are around the stage for the music and the burlesque show, you got to put that in the comment section. Like we want the front table. And if you put that, they give it to you. So we learned that as our little tip now. So now whenever we want to go, we know like 2 weeks out, tell them what table you want. and you're set up. And they have really great food down there. I had the dish that Gordon Ramsay made really one of his staples. They have a different name for it in his restaurants, but it's basically, I think it's called beef Wellington. And it's like, I don't know what the cut of meat is, but it's encased in this flaky, crusted bread. It's so,
Yeah, I think it's beef tenderloin encased in like either a phyllo dough or a pastry dough.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, it's so good. They only serve it in the winter, so I got to get back down there to get my serving of it. But that place is a real fun spot out here to eat at, and it's got a cool vibe. And for 2.5 hours, you feel like you're not in Nashville, which Nashville's great, but it's like great
Takes you
restaurants.
out.
They transport you somewhere else while you're there. You know what I mean? So it's a real cool.
That's for sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, mindful of your time. You're good on time, Tim?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. I got about 25 minutes or so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I saw, I try to deep dive on people's Instagram and stuff, just see old pictures and stuff. There's a market in Stockton where you started your jiu-jitsu journey, Tom's Market with Eric Shingu.
Yep.
Is Tom's Market, was that just like an old liquor store and he took it over, or why did you have that picture up? Was it like next door to that, or?
It was next door, and if I have the story straight, they owned the next door spot that we trained in. He was basically the landlord, and man, I got to remember his name because his father, the guy that the dad of that guy was a martial artist in the area who was really well known, and everybody had a lot of respect for him. And it was just one of those old school places, and they make great sandwiches there too, by the way. So that was another spot back in the OG days when I first, because that neighborhood is terrible. And when I started training in 2005, it was probably worse. It was very skid rowy, and there was like the worst, like San Francisco style adult bookstore, just like seedy San Francisco, like, ooh, this is like safe or good. There was a store like that was across the street from the gym, and we get looky-loos and just people walking in off the street will go down there. But Tom's Market was next door, and we often referred to the gym as like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be down Tom's Market. Because Shingu didn't, honestly, Eric did not do a ton of self-promotion. Like that gym didn't have a sign. You would never know there was a jiu-jitsu gym. I had to go down that street 4 times before I found it. And I didn't find it by driving. I parked and got out and I started walking and like looking in every door. And then I saw like, well, this has to be the jiu-jitsu gym. It wasn't until later that Eric started marketing like Shingu Fighter and building up a bigger presence for the school. But back in that day, it was just Tom's Market.
I know you're a big WWE fan and stuff, but did you do like, probably messing around with Big MF when you were younger, trying to wrestle and stuff? But were you in martial arts? Did you take any other martial arts before you started jiu-jitsu?
No. In fact, the opposite. Karate was forbidden in my house, and I'll tell you why. So there was a time period where Big MF and his brother James and their mom lived with us, and it was glorious. I thought it was the best thing ever that my cousins lived in the house, and my 2 cousins took karate at a local school called Moore's Karate, and there's quite a few of them in California, especially Northern California. Not a huge chain, but there's multiple Moore's Karates. And my parents were like, we can't afford karate, yo. But I would go down there and watch the karate lessons and just get super hyped up on karate. And I'd come home yelling das and kicking and going ape, dude. And so my mom made a rule that we were not allowed to talk about or practice karate in the house. It was a off-limits subject. So, of course, then I really wanted to do karate, to be honest with you. And I remember watching Karate Kid and being like, dude, I think I could teach myself karate from this movie. And just going in my room and like doing the waxing and the wax on, wax off, painting the fence and throwing kicks. Always fascinated with martial arts. We watched lots of wrestling, of course, you know, thank God we had that. That was awesome. I tell people I learned everything I need to know about life watching professional wrestling. The other thing is my grandpa that was from Oklahoma loved boxing. I don't remember him actually boxing, but he loved boxing. There was a lot of fights on all the time. There was always like some fighting event or wrestling. We liked Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was still really popular when I was a kid. Like, you know, Enter the Dragon, I think came out in 1978. That was the year I was born. So, you know, in the mid 80s, 86, 87, like Bruce Lee was still very popular. Karate Kid was super big, you know, so I was definitely interested in martial arts in a big, big way. It was just something that seemed so expensive for us. And my mom was not big on it at all. My dad was like, whatever. But yeah, didn't do any traditional training, you know. My cousin had started. So the UFC is so ubiquitous now. It's everywhere. It's like one of the major sports, I would say, in this country. And, you know, getting worldwide, to be honest with you. And when we first found out about the UFC, it was because my cousin had a co-worker named Dave Lozen. Shout out to Dave, Dark Wolf MMA, out in the Orlando area in Florida. I still keep in contact with that guy to this day. They worked at Office Depot together in Stockton. And Dave caught wind somehow that Matt liked fighting. And Dave told him, come out to the parking lot. I got to show you something. And now Matt's like, what? You know, like, what do you got to show me in the parking lot, dude? And so he goes out there and Dave got this paper bag and he pulls a video cassette out of it. And Matt's thinking like he's got some snuff film or some raunchy weird porn or something, you know? And he's like, what's this? And he's like, it's called the UFC. You gotta watch it, man. And he gave him the tape and Matt brought it back. And I remember we watched it. It was UFC 2. And we're like, what is this? Like, I don't know what this is. And I didn't like Hoist. I thought he was cheating. I thought he might have had a rope in his gi that he was using to choke people with. I really did. I did not get it, man. But they had mentioned, Ken Shamrock from the Lions Den in Lodi, California. Now, Lodi's like 11 miles from Stockton.
Right.
And Big MF, his ears like, what? There's a MMA, like I could go learn this stuff. And it wasn't too much longer than that he was going up there training with those guys. And he would come home and be like, dude, I trained with, I met Frank Shamrock today. I met Jerry Bolander. I trained with Vernon Tiger White. I trained with Mikey Burnett. Pete Williams was there. Oh, Ken came in today. I met, it was just, all those OG guys, they were all going in and out of that spot. And my cousin was around them. I remember when my cousin told me, hey, they brought this kid in today named Nick Diaz. Because originally, Nick was coming in through Bob Shamrock's. He had this fight team he was starting called Shamrock 2000, and Nick was going to be on the team. Steve Heath, shout out to Steve, who's an OG martial artist in Stockton, the guy who kind of knew Nick before everyone else and actually brought him into martial arts and jiu-jitsu. He was taking him there. And then I don't know what happened actually with that situation, but Nick eventually ended up with Cesar Gracie, who was the other big name at that time, because Cesar was starting to put out fighters and they were doing no-gi jiu-jitsu, which nobody was really doing in the States. And so my cousin was exposed to it early and he got that tape. We watched it. I liked it. I just didn't like jiu-jitsu. I just thought it was weird. Didn't make any, just could not comprehend how somebody could win like that. And when I was 27, which was in 05, I remember I was feeling out of shape and I was going to the gym and lifting and trying to get yoked, but it was hard to make myself do it. And I thought, well, maybe I could do jiu-jitsu. I saw The Ultimate Fighter season 1 and I'm like, oh, the UFC's on TV. Like, I'm going to watch this. And I started watching it and I realized how much I enjoyed it. I'm like, this is pretty fun. Because after we watched UFC 2, we started watching the UFC when we could. And it was a little trickier to find back then. But I remember watching 2 through 10 for sure, like checking those out and trying to keep up with it. And then somewhere when I started going to college, I kind of wasn't as intensely following it. But, as an adult, I called up my cousin and I'm like, hey, you think this would be good to do? And he's like, yes, it would be something to do. You need to do it. Go to Pacific Coast Martial Arts. And I've told the story before where he's like, it's for Nick Diaz, tell him Matt Freeman sent you. And I'm just like, okay. Like, I don't know anything, but Big MF is the toughest guy I know up to this point. Like, in my brain, he can whoop everyone's ass. So I'm like, if he says to go there, that's where I'm going. So I go down there and I'm like, I had like sweats and an oversized Hanes t-shirt on. And I'm just like,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm here to see Nick Diaz. Like, he's over there. So I go down there and I'm like, are you Nick Diaz? Yeah. That my name's Tim Freeman. Freeman sent me. And true story, man. He looked me right in the eye and he goes, who the fuck is Matt Freeman? And I'm like, oh no, like I can feel the tension,
Mm-hmm.
And I start stuttering and stuff. My cousin, he does jiu-jitsu, said to come down here. And Nick goes, man, it's good. Yeah, I probably just recognize his face, man. Like, don't worry about it. We don't have class right now, but I'm gonna give you a private lesson for your first time you come down here. He gave me a private lesson for an hour, man. I don't remember how to do any of the shit he showed me.
Right.
I just knew, like, I came down here, I met this guy. I thought he was going to beat me up in the beginning, and now he's giving me a private lesson. And I know my cousin speaks well of him. He had been in the UFC. He already knocked out Robbie Lawler at that point. I just didn't realize, and I don't know if anybody realized how big of a name he was going to get eventually, right? But yeah, that was my introduction to it. I went from no martial arts, just watching TV, to like kind of just jumping into the jiu-jitsu world, and else like.
Yeah, and then your journey's taking you here now with, you probably didn't even think you'd have 2 academies.
No, not at all.
And commenting no-gi jiu-jitsu pretty much. And I think it's kind of cool, like, because of the history, my first seminar was Andre Galvao. I was like, what?
Right.
I didn't know at the time how big that was to get a seminar from a 9-10 time champion, but like your journey's been awesome. It's as awesome to see, like, we met and then, you were just off and running already, but like, what's it like now to see jiu-jitsu is really at the forefront? Like, I think, we wanted to talk about it before, like, we just got back from ADCC and CJI. I think yesterday or today I just saw or I think you posted it today, I think, that CJI 2 is booked possibly.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Like, what's it like now to, be running the academies? Also, like, my last question for you too is Liz had for you is, how'd you get your kids involved in jiu-jitsu? I think a lot of parents will want to ask you that. Someone that's been involved in martial arts now, like most of your later years. What's it like being in the mix now? Like, it's really blowing up, I think, with no-gi jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu in general, of course, with UFC and everything.
It's interesting. I feel like I'm the fourth thumb of jiu-jitsu. Like, I've gotten to be in a lot of cool places at cool times, but not necessarily on purpose. It's just like I was there. Same thing with the World Jiu-Jitsu Expo, right? Like, I wasn't supposed to be there, except Javier Vasquez, shout out to him. They did a night of super fights that night. They did a pay-per-view, and the big main event was going to be Braulio Estima versus Nick Diaz, and Nick Diaz no-showed it, right? Well, Friday, before that Saturday, I got a phone call from Rose Gracie, and she goes, Javier, he had to pull out from the commentary gig. And I had done like 12 episodes of Inside BJJ, up to maybe 12 or 15, not a ton. Do you want to take a spot on the commentary? And I was like, yes, I do. No experience whatsoever, like zero experience. But I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to do it. Let's do it. And so I freaking drove down there and did it. And you know, if you could find those videos on YouTube. There's several times where I'm like, I'm waiting for the camera and I'm like, is it on? Is it on? And the guy's like, dude, don't say that. Like when I go like this, start talking, dog. Like, oh, is it on? Right. But you know, I got to do that. I got to go down to Metamoris, got to see you there as well. I started Inside BJJ I was not ready to open a school, and I didn't know if I ever was going to open a school, to be honest with you. My plan was to get a blue belt. I thought if I can get a blue belt, dog, like I'm going to be one of the baddest dudes in the room. I didn't know I was going to get totally consumed with jiu-jitsu and addicted to it. But yeah, I've been able to jump around to a lot of cool places because of the podcast, honestly, because I'm just a dude from Stockton. I didn't go to traditional high school. I was homeschooled from 7th grade to 11th grade, took the high school equivalency test, went to junior college early, went to Sacramento State, just locally educated, lived local, didn't really have a big circle, had very few friends because I didn't go to high school. So even to this day, when I'm back in town and I'm like, all my friends are jiu-jitsu people, when I meet guys like Ryan and Jeff who run Gian Stelly, they're like, where'd you go to high school again? And I'm like, I didn't go to Lincoln, dude. Like, I didn't go to high school. I don't know the people you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was a little bit of an oddball like that. And because of the podcast, I think the name Inside BJJ was really fortunate. I thought of this name on the way back from vacation. We were passing through Long Beach to go home from San Diego. Well, I convinced my wife to take an excursion because it was the Sunday of Black Belt Worlds. And I'm like, we got to go watch it and then we'll go the rest of the way home. And she's like, all right. And we had this long conversation on the way home. Like, I know how to work. I know how to write software and I barely know how to do jiu-jitsu. How can I combine those things? She's like, you should have like a website for jiu-jitsu. I'm like, okay, that's what I started with. And eventually that morphed into a podcast a few months later. But the name Inside BJJ really helped. I could build a website. I put a presence out online that I think made it look bigger and more official than what it was. And I wasn't afraid to call schools and be like, hey, I want to talk to Kyle Terra. Is he there? Like I'd cold call places. And to be honest, jiu-jitsu guys now get a lot more publicity than they got then. They were dying for someone to talk to them. Like, you want to interview me? Like, hell yeah, I want to be interviewed. So that really played in my favor. And I got to build a lot of relationships that way. Met Eddie Bravo that way. You know, met Halleck Gracie that way. And Halleck lives in Franklin now, which is insane, dude. He walked into my academy about a year ago. And I'm like, what are you doing here, dude? And he's like, I moved out here. So it's wild. But I got to build those relationships and I just kept it going. You know, I let off the gas a lot during COVID. It was a tricky time for a lot of people. But you know, I started it back up. I've known Brandon McCaffrey, through the podcast. Actually, I knew him through Sherdog, the jiu-jitsu message board way back in the day. And then he used the Amazon click-through link and he bought a bunch of gear and he used the Inside BJJ Amazon click-through link and he bought a significant amount of gear and we actually made some money on it. And I'm like, whoa, this Brandon guy's pretty cool. And then he called in to Inside BJJ and he played this song written in the voice of Hoyler, how he dominated Eddie. Like, it was like a satirical song and it was awesome. And I just became friends with him and I've known him over the years. And, you know, he's a hustler. I've watched Brandon blow up, as many of his friends and family have, just regular dude to like, you know, jiu-jitsu superstar. And so when he started PGF, he'd asked me to come down season 4 and 5 and in Decatur's an hour and 40 minutes from here. I've been down there a bunch of times, but I was just like, yeah, I'll see if I can get down. It was always during the week. I just didn't get it. I'm like, you're doing a grappling event like Monday through Friday during like the daytime. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if I could pull that off. And it sounds odd to be, you know, and it did seem odd to me. But when season 6 came around, he had come up to Nashville. We did a show and he started telling me details and he told me a lot of behind the scenes details that he wasn't able to share at that time on air. And I was just like, dude, this is awesome, man. And he's like, I want you to be part of it. You're somebody that like Inside BJJ was my thing, man. I listened to it. It's awesome. The first time I came on your show, I was like, I'm on Inside BJJ. So a lot of those relationships paid off way later. And it wasn't until I didn't know Brandon was going to blow up. I just liked Brandon. I thought he was a cool guy. And, I try to treat people with kindness and respect. And, it's better to be nice to people than it is to be a dick to people, unless it really warrants it, So that worked out into my favor. And, I do the bullpen now with Rafa Sparza, right? And that goes out on the Grappling Hour. Rap started the Verbal Tap MMA comedy podcast, which was like jiu-jitsu and comedy, which is great. 2 months before I started Inside BJJ. And so he was always like this guy that was also out there. And I'm like, who's this guy? And eventually through going down to Southern California a lot, I ran into him and got to know him. And I always viewed him as a competitor. I had respect for him because I know back then it wasn't easy to do. There was no roadcasters and USB mics and Osmo cameras and all these Riverside studios and all this whole didn't exist, man. It was just like bananas, right? So I was like, man, I got respect for this dude. He's pulling it off because it's not easy. And we stayed in contact, and Brandon got us together to work at the PGF. And he told me, like, I want you to work with Raph. And I'm like, Raph? You want me to work with Raph? I'm like, that guy's my competitor. But then, like, is he really though? We've been like working hard in the same space for a long time, and got to work with him for the first time doing the bullpen. And I enjoyed it so much. And after a few weeks, I said, I think it's better when we're together. As much as I want to think that I'm awesome on my own, I'm like, it's really great to work with you. And so it's been a great relationship since then. And it's off to him, man, because he pushes hard behind the scenes. He can produce at a television show level. He's really experienced and he's really, really good. And he's a super hard worker. So it's been a super privilege. So it's amazing to see jiu-jitsu blow up like this. Like you don't often get to be part of something that is amateur and then becomes professional, and you get to be on both sides.
Yeah.
Right. Oftentimes you come in after it's professional, and once it's professional, that's it. You're not getting it. It's way harder. It's super hard to get an NFL commentary gig in 2024. But in 1954, 1959, it was probably a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
Right. Just like, and jiu-jitsu is still wide open, in my opinion. It's the Wild West still, especially in the no-gi world. There's plenty of time, plenty of room. But it is pretty amazing to see. And probably the best part for me is just on a personal level, and I'm not ashamed to admit it at all, is when I go somewhere and I meet people and they're like, dude, I used to listen to Inside BJJ, or I listened to it, or dude, I remember you did this. And because oftentimes it's easy when you're doing something like this, like you're in your house, you're talking. I've had a lot of imposter syndrome moments from like, what in the hell am I even doing? What am I doing? I'm like making these shows and doing all this crazy stuff, and like nobody's making money, and it just seems ridiculous at a certain point, but then when somebody comes up and goes, no, dude, I listen to it like every day on the way to work, or I always look forward to when the episodes came out, or when I first started training jiu-jitsu, I listened to your show religiously. Then it feels good because you realize like, no, it has a real place in what's happening. And it's part of the story that's being written. And, I'm not a world-class competitor. I'm not the best coach in the world. I think I'm a better coach than I am a competitor for sure. But, I'm just an average dude. I was mediocre when it came to competition. And it feels good to contribute in a bigger way than maybe what I could if I was just in a gym somewhere, training all the time, not doing this. And I love doing it. So it's been real special to me. And it feels like finally I'm getting that OG status level with people where they're like, they will talk to me and they will make a space for me, and they do care what I have to say. And that's taken a long, long time to get there. But yeah, I'm enjoying every bit of it that I can, man. So it's been great.
Yeah, and then it's cool to see that your kids grew up training too,
Yeah, and, I just had Joe Spinell on Inside BJJ. He's the black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's the first person that I met out here outside of my wife's sister who lives there. And she introduced us to him. And it just happened to be that he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So we hit it off. And he's got 3 boys, just like, I have 2. They're around the same age. And something we talked about that I really agree on, is super big, is when I had my kids train, I wanted them to love grappling. I wanted them to have a fun enough experience that it was something they looked forward to doing and they wanted to do. Now, as a small business owner, I would say that I might have soiled that a little bit by going like, hey, I need you to take out the garbage now, or it's after class. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. But that pays dividends in other ways, right?
Yeah.
But I know there were times when they're like, dude, I don't want to vacuum the gym, Dad. Like, I want to run around. But I never pushed them too hard. If they wanted to compete, I took them to competitions and I would help them get ready. And, I would be excited for them and I might give them advice and I might say, hey, you made a mistake here. I might be upset emotionally when they lose because it's my son and I want him to win, but I was never upset at them, right? I've never been upset at any of the kid competitors for losing them. Who cares? Not that big of a deal. And the reality with most kids is that they are not going to do jiu-jitsu from the time they're a child to the time they're an adult. It's not going to happen. They're going to do it for a few years if you're lucky. And then they're going to go do other stuff because they're growing up and their life changes and things happen. And, they discover girls in high school or they get into music or whatever. My goal was always, I want this kid to have a great enough experience that they will have fond memories of it. And maybe someday later in life, when they're looking for something to do, this will be the thing. They'll find jiu-jitsu wherever they're at. They'll go, dude, like, I remember Coach Tim. I remember kids' class. That was fun. Jiu-jitsu was really awesome. I should go try that again. So that's always been my approach. I want my boys to train forever. And I always wanted it to be a fun experience where they could really learn how to love it from the martial arts standpoint and not always make it about, you got to execute. You can't do that. You can't get tapped. You can't do this. Like, that was never me in the first place because I sucked. I got beat all the time. So I never had any high ground to stand on.
Yeah. I think that's a humbling part about jiu-jitsu too, is that you don't get to start, you don't learn something and then you're like, oh, I'm really good at it. You're like, no, you're terrible for like years.
I know.
Like you were talking about karate, like you learn a kick, a punch, and you do it 1,000 times. Cool. You're starting to get good at it. And if you kick someone, yeah, it might hurt. But like jiu-jitsu is like, you learn an armbar and like, cool, man, you learned how to do it that one way that we know there's 90 other options the way to do an armbar. And then to actually pull it off on someone that is resisting is like, light years. It feels like light years away from you being able to do it that first time, and it's like, so I think like to get through that and like, I think like mentally is probably also like a huge part about it. And I think like what's cool to see you grow in all of that aspect, like the ups and downs. And I think I made a post about us because I was like, our peaks and valleys, we've seen each other go through these peaks and valleys, and it is not all sunshine and rainbows at all, especially you being a small business owner, running a podcast. So like, it's cool to see all that like come to fruition. And then it's just building on all the relationship that you've had. And I think I've learned that too, starting this podcast, is I was an end user before I even like talked to them about interviewing them. Like I go to, whether it was a butcher or someone that's made a product, I've been an end user for like years before I even said anything about either asking them to do anything for me. And so like I think that helps out a lot towards and everything. And then with jujitsu is great. Like once you've trained with someone or visited an academy, you guys are like friends forever, because they're like, oh yeah, I remember when that guy came through, he sought out to train with me, whether it's somewhere super far. Like me and my brother just got to train with Yuki Nakai, which is like a awesome like bucket list thing to do. I mean, I don't know if you'll remember us, but like that was an epic experience, you know?
Yeah.
Forever. Like we'll have that forever, or like doing seminars wherever, and like you pick all that stuff up, and then those relationships build off, because when you do come back and you're like, hey, because I mean, you guys got to need to look at who's Tim's interviewed. It's the who's who of jiu-jitsu pretty much. Like you pretty much nailed like 90% of the head instructors of academies all over the place, all over the world, pretty much, because everything's expanded out. And, you know, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but like, you know, is there anything you want to leave us with? I always ask, the floor is yours to promote anything you got going on, any advice you want to give people. And all the restaurants and good stuff will be in the show notes. So don't worry about trying to remember everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, man. First of all, you're awesome, Dave. And you are, man. I really appreciate our friendship, and you're a real true friend, and those are hard to find. And you demonstrate that to your actions. And I've often told you, like, I feel like I'm a shitty friend. Yeah, but and this is real. I have learned from you how to be a better friend to other people, which is a really valuable thing. So I appreciate that. And I think it's awesome what you've done with Food Origins, because I remember having a conversation with you outside of Jackson Fillmore about like, what am I going to do next, man? And it's just like, you did it, dude. You just did it. Just did it. And it's like, wasn't easy. It wasn't like you just woke up and everything was all set up and ready for you, but you did it. And, you know, that's awesome. So just like the nice things you say about watching me grow, dude, I get to experience you watching you. So congratulations on that. And also, everybody should start cooking. I love jiu-jitsu and I think everyone should train, but I think people should cook. Cooking is super fun. And you don't have to be an amazing chef to cook, man. And you have opportunities. You gotta eat every day. You have opportunities to get your reps in every freaking day. And eventually, if you do it enough, you will figure out how to make things better. And it's not hard. Like, I want to know how to make this. What do I do? Call Dave, look it up online, see how difficult it is. Sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'm not doing this. Like, this is too involved, right? But then there's other things where you go like, I think I can do this. And it's challenging, but it's rewarding. You get to eat it. And the funnest part, and I think you alluded to this earlier, is giving it to someone else and having somebody else experience it. For me, that's like, man, that's tops. Like, I like cooking for myself, but I could eat all kinds of, I like junk food. I like all kinds of stuff. But to make something for somebody else, I'm not going to make some crappy food for somebody else. I'm going to like make it the best that I can make it. And it not only tastes good, but it actually sustains their life, which is pretty freaking cool at the same time. I think it's a very human experience. And so cooking is like the craft of being able to reproduce. People can draw, they can reproduce art. You can reproduce a taste inside of somebody's mouth. For me, that's like, wow, that's freaking awesome. So I think everybody should cook as much as you can. Don't be afraid to do it. I don't know anything. I just like cooking, man. And I learn from you all the time. I'm trying to get my blue belt from you. Cooking.
You're getting close. You're getting close.
Getting close, man. It's tough, dude. On top of that, you know, Inside BJJ, social media platforms, Inside BJJ.com, if you want to check out those interviews. I think we just did episode 402, which is a lot, but you know, there's obviously people have a lot more than that, but there's a lot of stuff out there. Always had fun doing it. I still have fun doing it. And then it's been a super pleasure to work on the Bullpen, which is like, you know, the official pre and post show for the PGF. We did that at Subversive. I was supposed to go back out to Subversive for the recent Fight Club one they did, but I got pneumonia and that kind of threw a wrench in my plans. But, you know, I can say this, and I hope this doesn't fall flat, but I'm pretty sure it's not. You should expect to see the Bullpen coming up for the Jiu-Jitsu overdose that's taking place this weekend, which is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Eddie Bravo is a madman. I love him, but he's a madman, and he's putting 2 combat jiu-jitsu shows, Medusa, which is female combat jiu-jitsu, and EBI, which I think is either the lightweights or the featherweights. And they're doing this from Cancun. They're Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we're
Wow.
Setting up to do a bunch of shows for that, which is just, it's awesome, man. Like, I just keep getting to have fun. I love to talk about jiu-jitsu. I don't take it too seriously, and I don't take myself that seriously either. So it's easy to poke fun at other people when you also poke fun at yourself. But yeah, man, if you're ever in Nashville, come see us at 10th Planet Nashville. We get lots of visitors out here. If you're in Stockton for court, a funeral, a legal matter,
Looking for the Diaz brothers.
you're an
Good
outlaw. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
by 10th Planet Stockton. You meet Dave, and you can meet all the crew out there. A great crew of people out there. I miss you guys in a major, major way. So it's always great to talk to you guys and see you, man. It's been a real pleasure, Dave.
Cool. On that note, appreciate everybody for listening. Thanks for the support. We're out.